Shameless credit achieved. Yes!
He made me ride it.
I'm Gary, and this is Coasting with Culture. I like to combine theme park visits and riding roller coasters with various cultural experiences around the world. Previously, Chris, Joanna, and I made our way to the two main amusement parks of Iowa, starting with Adventureland in Altoona, where we rode their coasters, including the two Woodies, Tornado and Outlaw. We then continued north to the amusement park of Arnold's Park, and had the opportunity to ride the classic Legend, and to also get a previously missed coaster credit. Next, we're heading to Valleyfair in Shakopee, Minnesota, the state's largest amusement park with coasters like the Wild Thing and Renegade. After that, I'll continue on my own to the smaller park in St. Paul known as Como Town for one last coaster before returning home to the Pacific Northwest. Unfortunately, Joanna did not join us on the last days of the trip because she had to handle some issues that came about for her to get home. So it was just Chris and I for the last day's stop at Valleyfair. After a short Uber ride, we were ready to visit one half of the namesake of the Cedar Fair amusement park chain. This was the second to last Cedar Fair park that I had yet to visit, with only Canada's Wonderland left to go.
All right, so Chris and I have made it to Valleyfair. We're gonna go and check out the coasters they have here. This is the biggest park of the trip. Chris, what are you looking forward to?
Probably Wild Thing or Renegade. I think
definitely looking forward to Wild Thing and definitely looking forward to Renegade. And of course there's the Excalibur, the Arrow mine train.
Another good one.
Yeah, so we'll go ahead and check out what they got here and see what we can enjoy.
So far walking through the park here, I'm kind of getting Dorney Park vibes off the place.
It does have a sort of Dorney Park feel to it, that's for sure.
It does, yeah.
The front of the park really does have the feel of Dorney Park in Allentown, and even has a clone of a coaster that can be found at the Pennsylvania Park, the Intamin Impulse coaster, Steel Venom. Impulse coasters are always a fun ride because of the speed and height they get going up the spikes. I love the ones that have the hold brake in the back spike for a momentary pause, which unfortunately has been turned off on some of them. We sort of took a front-to-back approach for our coaster riding, although we did skip a couple of them as they may not have been open at the time for maintenance reasons, so we'd come back to those in the middle a bit later. We did, however, make a stop at Planet Snoopy to get a shameless coaster credit on the Cosmic Coaster. This larger Zamperla coaster may be one that some would hesitate to ride, but not us.
Shameless credit achieved. Yes!
He made me ride it.
From the smallest coaster in the park, we went ahead to ride the largest.
All right, Chris, what are we about to ride?
Steel Force.
The Steel Force?
Yeah.
So maybe Chris is still confusing this park with Dorney Park, as both have Morgan Hyper coasters. The Valleyfair version, known as Wild Thing, just about covers the full length of the park and can be seen from just about anywhere inside.
All right, so Chris and I just got off of the Wild Thing here, and that was a lot of fun.
Well, the first two hills, you are really completely off your seat the whole whole curvature of the top of the hill.
Yeah, so the first airtime hill after the first big drop, we were sitting in the second row in the front car, and the way that it just kind of has you going over, you're just sitting, or you're out of the seat pretty much the entire length of that hill. It's like, am I ever going to be in the seat again? It's kind of fun. The brakes going into a latter part of the track, the mid-course brake, yeah, it does. And then the airtime hills at the end is just kind of a little mundane, but still that one hill though, whew, gotta come back and try it on the back row and see how that is a little bit later.
Yeah.
But there's a couple other things to do first.
We went back down in size for the next coaster as we rode the Mad Mouse, one of the few aerodynamics-built Wild Mouse coasters. After riding this, I can now say I've ridden all 4 of the Aero-made versions, including the defunct one that used to operate at the Myrtle Beach Pavilion. At this point, we made our lunch stop, going to a place that's a personal favorite of mine found at Cedar Point as well, Chickies and Pete's. Their crab fries and the cheese dip are fantastic. After lunch, we rode the coaster that is the most difficult to get footage of inside the park, Excalibur, another aero coaster with steel track and wood supports.
Excalibur was one I was really looking forward to trying out because there have been some rumors lately that it was scheduled to be removed here in the next couple of years, but this was just a really quirky, fun ride, almost like a weird crossbreed between Gemini and Magnum. What do you think, Chris?
I agree.
Yeah.
I also got a few airtime moments in the front there, and back was still a lot of fun too, especially over the first hill.
Right.
First drop.
Yeah, there was a couple of moments of airtime in there, although they kind of gave it the traditional Cedar Fair trim brake treatment with like 4 or 5
Going down
trims.
the first drop.
Yeah, right down the first drop. It was basically the same thing as Mean Streak, but in Aero Mine Train form. So still a fun ride though. Hopefully they'll keep it around for a little bit.
Continuing the transition from steel to wood, we went on to what was probably the best coaster in the park, Renegade. This great coaster's international wooden coaster offers their signature twister style with the beautiful Millennium Flyer trains that have been a part of their installations for several years now. And this particular coaster led to some strong opinions about the ride.
Yeah, those nuts.
Yeah, coming from a park that has 2 GCIs, I think this kicked my ass.
Yeah, so this thing, the airtime on it was a little bit more than I was expecting. This
The turn's really fast too.
right. That first drop at the swooping S turn to the bottom, that was a surprise how many laterals you got out of that thing. I'm pretty sure half the time I was in your seat,
Yeah, pretty
even
much.
though there's a seat divider.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, that was good. That was really good. I would say that this is probably one of the best GCIs I've been on.
Same.
Yeah,
Tops American Thunder, tops all the others I've ridden.
yeah, this was good. If you get a chance to come to Valleyfair, ride Renegade. Awesome!
Since we had already tried one Woody, we went for another. Like many of the classic out and back style rides, this one is about the hills. While it is a classic, having Renegade in the same park makes it a little tricky for this one to get the same kind of love.
So rides like High Roller are a little bit tough to judge because you want to like those classics, but sometimes the maintenance that goes into them kind of takes away from the ride experience. In the case of High Roller, it was the use of trim brakes throughout that really slow it down,
Yeah.
and it just,
It's a mediocre.
yeah,
I think it would be the definition of a mediocre coaster, really.
yeah, that's pretty fair to
As much as I
say.
hate to say it.
Yeah, so it's a classic, but not
Few
gonna
pops
be.
there towards the beginning of the ride, maybe one at the end of the ride, but nothing to write home about.
Yeah.
Valleyfair had one more coaster for us, and it was yet another Aero. This one being their looping coaster, Corkscrew. In many respects, this ride feels very inspired by its cousin of the same name at Cedar Point, but with an even better waterside setting. While there have been several Aero loopers higher on my list, I've always enjoyed being able to ride these classics as they're becoming more and more rare. Since we had completed the coaster collection of Valleyfair, we took the opportunity to try out a few other rides, like the S&S Tower Ride Power Tower. This may have one of the neatest bridges to get onto the ride, and of course the ride itself was a pretty good thrill as well. To help us return to the front of the park, we took a ride on the Minnesota River Valley Railroad, which happens to pass right underneath Corkscrew. After a few other rides and some re-rides, our day at Valleyfair came to an end.
So we've gotten to the end of our day here at Valleyfair. Chris, what did you think of the park?
I went in expecting a clone of Dorney Park, came out, surprise. It's a really good quality park.
It really was a pleasant surprise of a park. You know, I was taken by surprise by the likes of Excalibur as well as by the Wild Thing because, you know, I didn't anticipate that they were going to have those surprise moments of airtime.
Yeah.
And then Renegade was, whoo!
Flew it out of the water.
No kidding. That ride was crazy. So
much airtime.
Exactly. So at this point now, we are going to go ahead and we're going to get ourselves a ride back to the hotel. And then in the morning, we're going to make our way over to the Mall of America again so that we have a little bit of time before it's time to head home and end this grand adventure here in Minnesota and Iowa.
It was a great day at Valleyfair, and while it was the last full day of the trip, we weren't done just yet. The next morning, Joanna had gotten her transportation situation solved and began her drive back home to Illinois. Chris and I had some time before our flights in the afternoon, so we came back to the Mall of America, but we had different plans.
So we find ourselves back at the Mall of America again. Chris and I are taking a little bit of a divide and conquer approach to the day because he's going to stick around here at the mall, do a little bit of shopping and checking out some of the stores. I myself am going to do what I do, and that's go seek out credits, as there is one in St. Paul that I'm going to go track down. And then we're going to convene back here at the mall and do some more riding. So we'll see what we get into. Chris, we'll see each other later.
Good luck.
While Chris did some shopping, I was on a mission to get one more coaster. As I was looking into a cheaper option to make it there, I took the light rail from the end of the line at the mall to go into downtown Minneapolis. This is the same line that you can take directly to the airport, as Chris and I would later in the afternoon. When I previously used this light rail to get to the Mall of America from the airport, it was in January of 2014, so it was pretty cold and the whole place was covered in snow. Talk about a major contrast to today, where it's nice and sunny and warm. Upon arrival to downtown Minneapolis, I hopped off at the US Bank Stadium station, getting to see this unique venue that's home of the Minnesota Vikings on the site of the former Metrodome. In order to get to St. Paul though, I would hop onto a bus. A bit later, I made it to Como Regional Park. Since it was a beautiful summer day, it was easy to see why many families were here to enjoy it together. And while the park has picnic benches and play fields, I ultimately came for one reason: a small amusement park by the name of Como Town.
Made it to Como Town here in St. Paul, Minnesota after taking a light rail and a bus to get here. Gonna take a chance to enjoy the Tiger Tracks, a galaxy-style roller coaster here at Como Town, and the last new credit of this trip.
While these galaxy-style coasters are hardly record breakers, going to find the smaller parks where they're located can be fun in itself, especially when you get the chance to see charming smaller parks like this one.
Got the coaster I was looking for, so it was a successful stop. Now I'm gonna head back to the mall to catch back up with Chris, grab some food, do some rides, and then we're gonna head to the airport this afternoon so that we can head home.
Because my Como Town excursion took a bit longer than I planned, I grabbed an Uber back to the mall. Chris and I made the most of the time to enjoy some of our favorites in Nickelodeon universe, like the Rock Bottom Plunge and after a while, we caught the light rail to return to the airport. Chris got on his flight to go back to Pennsylvania, and I on mine to go back to Washington. And that was the end of the Midwest trip. I'd like to thank Joanna and Chris for joining me in Minnesota and Iowa, and I'd like to thank you all for checking out my Midwest journey. I hope you enjoyed it, and that you'll come back for more Coasting with Culture. Thank you for watching this video from Coasting with Culture. If you haven't already done so, please consider clicking that subscribe button down below if you'd like to see future videos. You can also find Coasting with Culture on Twitter and Facebook as well. And of course, for more travel experiences, visit coastingwithculture.com. Until next time, take care and safe travels.